Welcome back to A Little Bit of Cheese, your daily bite-sized Wisconsin sports podcast. You are being joined today by me, Cody Depius, as well as Sam Douglas. Sam, thanks for being here once again today. It was a tough start to the weekend, but I think it was a really strong finish there. Of course, we had to get over the Brewers season ending, and then the Badgers, they started really rough against Purdue, but in the end, a blowout win for the Badgers, and then a win for the Green Bay Packers over the Los Angeles Rams. A 24-19 was the final score there. Xavier McKinney, his fifth straight game with an interception, fumble recovery. Jordan Love had an interesting day, maybe one of the worst plays I've seen from him, but also one of the best plays that I've ever seen from him. So just overall, I want to get your initial thoughts here. I'll go into kind of what my takeaways are from the game, but overall, I thought a good weekend.
Weekend couldn't have started any tougher. That's for darn sure. Brutal little Thursday night here on the bite-sized podcast. But yeah, like you said, Badgers pulled through, got a win. Packers won a tough one. So, we're sitting here on Monday morning a little bit disappointed with the Brew Crew. Packers got a dub, Badgers got a dub, and it's kind of the ship is all right in Wisconsin.
Yeah, it is. And you talk about the Brewers, and I talked a little bit about the curse that's kind of been going around these last couple of seasons here, that every single team that has beaten the Brewers in the playoffs has found its way to the World Series. The Mets started off really hot against Philadelphia, but then they did blow it yesterday after tying it up in the ninth. They ended up giving up a walk-off home run. So you kind of like to see that, but a 5-game series there. I don't want to watch that series, but you're kind of course hold to it with the curse. Like, you just want Philadelphia to win that, so you can feel that some of the curse has been broken to some point. But we'll kind of keep eyes on that. We'll keep tabs on it. Kind of just hurts a little bit to watch baseball at this point, but we still love it, so we still keep kind of attention to it. But we'll go back to Green Bay, and we'll start at the top here, because ahead of the game, it was a bit of a controversy and there's some discussions around it, but Romeo Doubs was not there for the game. He did not participate in practice all week. I said it on the injury report last week that it was listed as personal reasons. There had since come out reports that Romeo Doubs was not satisfied with the role that he had with the offense. So the team actually sent out officials. They found Romeo sitting at his house during practice when he was supposed to be at practice. They were concerned about him because he's a very high character guy that always shows up, always works hard. And it was just really weird that he wasn't at practice. The team officials, they were concerned for his well-being. They went out there and they just found him at home. And because of that, it was deemed detrimental actions to the team. And they said he was not going to play on Sunday. And that's exactly what happened. And for a team that had already lost Christian Watson due to an ankle injury, you're losing two of your top three receivers. Green Bay is a little bit shorthanded. Jair Alexander did not play, but regardless, the team was still able to go out and get a win. What are your overall thoughts on this whole Romeo Doubs situation? I think we're missing some pieces here, but what we've heard isn't good.
I got two kind of angles. I don't love it. You want to make sure you're on the field for your team. That's first and foremost. Whatever he's doing, you got to suspended. You got to get on the field. Show up, play ball. If this is about business, if this is about, him looking at his next contract, he wants to be able to be in a position to be a 10 plus target guy every night. Yeah, bet on yourself. If you got to make a little stink in the business room about a contract or something like that, you got to do it. But you got to show up to practice. You got to play the game. I don't know what's going on. We've got to be missing some information here. If it's contract stuff, I'm all for it. Everybody, go make your money. Do what you got to do. Get on
Right.
the field, man. You can't skip in practice. They had to show up to your house. Something was miscommunicated. We don't have all the information. I just want to see him on the field again because Dontavian Wicks can't get that many targets next week, man.
I
That was
mean, that's a whole nother conversation here. But with Romeo, it's really weird because, like I kind of said before, Romeo is the fourth round draft pick, just not a superstar personality, a kid out of Nebraska. He got drafted to Green Bay, not a lot of expectations coming out because he was in the same draft as Christian Watson. But when it
Mhm.
came to training camp, they're like, holy cow, this kid can kind of play. He was kind of the unsung hero, the underdog, and ended up being the top targeted guy in Green Bay the last couple of years, which is kind of where I find this to be a little bit weird because the reports, of course, they say that he is unsatisfied with his role on the team. He has gotten the most snaps of any receiver this year, and he's gotten the second most targets leading up to last week. And of course, he was on pace to the amount of targets that he had last year. I think he had 92 targets last year. He was on pace for 85 this year. And two of those games had Malik Willis, where they weren't really throwing the ball all that much. So it was, I don't know if it's the fact maybe that Wicks is getting a lot more targets in game, especially in practice, because there were even practices during training camp when Wicks would be the guy. Like there were times when Love would just go to Wicks because, and we've seen it in situations, Wicks just flat out gets open. He gets on these runs, and Love is trying to trust him right now with the drop issues. It's hard to trust him, but they're going to try to keep on feeding him the ball. I don't know if there's a frustration with that. There's also been some rumors. I don't know how credible these are that they're talking of trading Romeo Doubs. And maybe those rumors got to him. And maybe that's where this frustration stemmed from because he probably feels like he, as you said, go get your money. He probably personally feels like he's a wide receiver one and should be looking to get wide receiver one money. But you're surrounded by a bunch of guys in this wide receiver room that are also very talented. So it's a tough situation. I don't know what's true. There's different sides to the story here. I'd like to hear Romeo talk to reporters and see what he says. I don't know how much they're going to be able to get out of him, but the reports from LaFleur so far, they said they have high hopes that he'll be able to return to the team and that they can turn the page and move on to next week.
It's a little disappointing. I would think the whole MO of this Packers squad right now is a team mentality. You know, we have such a deep wide receiver room. The whole world knows it. And in order for that to work, there's got to be ego and pride to this side. You're gonna have weeks where, Dobbs gets 2 targets. Jaden Reed might have 2 targets, 2 catches on a day. Christian Watson, we've seen his volume go way up and way down at times. The only way this whole process works, Josh Jacobs, that's it. He led the league in rushing. He's going to have games where he had 9 carries against the Vikings. The way this works is if everybody checks their product aside, works as one unit. We got a guy in the NFL right now, Jamar Chase. He's a whole lot better than Romeo Doubs, and he's not getting paid yet. He made a little stink about his contract. If he's not going getting his money yet, I don't know what's going on with this Romeo situation. He's not going to make top tier money right now. He's involved in it. One heck of a team that has a chance to do something really great right now. Whatever's going on, start practicing. That's
Yeah.
that's what stay on the field.
Chase is a good guy to bring up because even though there were reports that he was frustrated and he even said things, he still showed up for the guys. Like it's a very, and like I said, we don't know everything about the situation. We don't know if there were conversations and maybe they said something to Romeo. I can't speak on that, but the optics here, they look pretty selfish considering what you see with that contract situation with Jamar Chase. He's trying to get that money. It's not happening, but he's still there. Maybe there are rumors that you're being traded. There's always rumors that anyone's being traded, especially at the wide receiver position. Guys move around quite a bit. And you say there's not a wide receiver one. I think it's starting to become solidified that Jaden Reed is that guy. You say there might be some weeks where he doesn't get that many targets. This kid he is too special. They're able to hand the ball off to him a couple times a game now too. And that one play that they had down the field, that might have been maybe one of the scariest, but one of the best throws I've seen out of Jordan Love. Are we getting so we've seen a little bit of both, I think, out of Jordan Love. Are we getting a little bit more of the Aaron Rodgers or a little bit more of the Brett Favre here as Jordan Love is kind of settling into what kind of player he's going to be?
He's starting off a little bit Farvey. He's taking
Yeah.
some risks. He's getting his feet under him a little bit. He might have been hanging out with Will Levis a little bit too much last week.
Ugh.
Hope
Ugh.
to stay a little bit more deep ball chucking, making some big plays, getting chunk plays, and winning games. I came on here about 3 weeks ago, and right after the Love injury, talked a little about winning some tough games and just walking out with victories, however it takes. When Malik Willis was coming into quarterback, and I like the adversity that we saw. I said that last week after Minnesota. A little bit of adversity, in Malik Willis. And I think this team really learned how to win a game, just walk out of an ugly game with some ugly
Mhm.
plays, an ugly pick six with the higher score than the other team. And I think that's going to be huge for this team going forward. I'm cool with a little bit of Brett Favre action out of Jordan Love. If that means that he's locking in after that and he's going 7 for 7 for 160 yards after that. So I like the learning experiences early in the season. We're still a young team, and sky's still the limit for this crew.
I think that's a great point where you talk a little bit about the Will Levis-esque play there. That pick six and Tony Romo on the broadcast. He sounded like a disappointed father. I saw an article talking about it. I was like, yeah, Tony Romo seemed very disappointed in Jordan Love there. Because that's one of those things that you just can't have happen. It was really bad. It was really boneheaded. But I think what you take most of that, and like you said before, what do you do in the next drive? How does the rest of the game look for you? Because there were times where Rodgers, he'd have a couple of drives go sour in that first half, and the second half would just be bad, and he'd just play frustrated and be mad at his teammates the entire time. I remember some very vivid games. I think it was 2015, 6-0 Packers are taking on the 6-0 Broncos. And I think Rodgers had one of his receivers run a wrong route. Rodgers threw an interception, and Rodgers ended that day with 2 interceptions and I think 77 yards passing total. And they got blown out by Denver, and they were an undefeated team going into that. Like I remember that game vividly, and there were a couple of others where Rodgers had just visibly show frustration either in himself or players and let that continue throughout the game. I love to see here how resilient Jordan Love is, how he's able to turn the page here. Like, yeah, he threw 3 interceptions last week. Doesn't mean he's scared going into this week. Doesn't mean he's watching out for those numbers. He's putting the ball up there. He's trusting his guys to go make a play. I love to see the confidence that he has. Like maybe it's a little, but it's not false confidence because it worked out to throw the ball up in triple coverage to Jaden Reed, who's shorter than every player down there. But to have the confidence in himself and his guys, you love to see that because football's a mentality game. You have to keep your confidence regardless of what goes wrong because there's gonna be bad plays. You're gonna have bad plays. Your receivers are gonna tip balls up in the air and get them picked off. Cough Romeo Doubs and Jordan Love last week, but you have to turn the page and continue to play through that. And Love came back and in that second half had essentially a perfect second half. Like there were no mistakes. I think overall a really good performance. I like to see after that interception how do you continue? And he did great. And I think that's an awesome thing. On the defensive side, really, they only gave up, it was the 12 points, is what it was. So, numbers wise, it looked great, but there was a whole lot of bend there. The run defense, I did not see a whole lot of push up front. I think Devontae Wyatt being out this week was a big factor in that lack of a run defense. The linebackers not running downhill, just not a lot you're seeing from the run defense, but I think overall you still like to see that this unit was able to hold together and not give up a big day to Stafford.
Their offensive line is very beat up for the way that we were losing the battle in the trenches, defensively. So I was really looking forward to. I was almost considering benching Kyron Williams in a fantasy matchup this week.
Hmm.
In a 10-team league, so I had some pretty decent depth. But I thought that he was really going to get swallowed up. I ended up playing him just because he can catch 10 targets on any given day.
And he's going to score a touchdown essentially every week is what we're learning. But
Small guy. I was really expecting a little bit more push from the defensive line. Still waiting for Rashawn Gary to make a splash at some point here. It's got to be happening. I don't know if he's getting. I know he's not getting triple teamed every single time. So we're really just waiting for something to happen here with Rashawn Gary. But you know what? That's all right if Xavier McKinney is the best free agent signing of the league this past year. 5 picks in 5 games and a fumble recovery. This is unreal. I love it. I'm ordering a jersey today.
yeah, no, he could have had 2 picks too. Like he had
Yeah,
another one go
should
through
have.
his hands. And
Should have.
it's not just how he's always in the right spot in the passing game. He's always there to make a play on run defense too. he's
Mhm.
always out there on the edge. Like he just always seems to be in the right spot. And I continue to bring up this whole Woodson comparison, and it's they're not the same player. They're not. But the type of effect that they bring to a defense, at least through 5 weeks here for Xavier McKinney, it is right there. He is the best free agent signing that Green Bay's had since Woodson, and that's saying quite a bit there. There was a Julius Peppers that Green Bay brought in, but the effect that McKinney has had here on this defense is it's just been really good. I like to see Edgerrin Cooper as well getting in on a sack. He had a couple of nice plays yesterday as well. Eric Stokes starting to get into his own. Saw Ballantyne make a couple of plays, but yeah, it's the two guys you brought them up, Rashawn Gary and Kenny Clark as well. There were a lot of tweets out there after the game where people said if you would have told me Rashawn Gary did not play this game, I wouldn't have batted an eye because he just hasn't shown up. And I don't know if it's the difference in scheme because you're seeing him line up with his hand not in the dirt. Like I think he's more of a stand-up outside linebacker kind of guy, and Hafley likes to let his guys play to their own style. It's not fitting those guys into a system. It's the system catering to the best that the players can be. So he's giving that freedom to Gary to play how he would like to play, and we just haven't seen it so far. And Kenny Clark, I think he's not allowed to be as effective, like just naturally in a 4-man front as he was in a 3-man front. He was able to disrupt a lot, and you're still seeing him try to be effective, but it just hasn't shown up that far. And I don't know if it's age. I don't know what the answer is here, but those are two guys where if you want this defense to continue to play well, you're going to need them to step up.
Absolutely will. Carl Brooks is feeling a little bit of a hole. Look forward to seeing a little bit more action from Carl Brooks. But it's not going to be sustainable. You need your big money guys to be making big money plays. Still no Jair out there. Looking forward to this defense. If we got a couple ifs going on. If Rashawn
Mhm.
Gary can start putting consistent pressure on the quarterbacks, if we can have Jair locked on one side, if we can have McKinney, picking 4 balls a ball a game off.
It's a
I
freak,
think
man.
this defense has a very, very high ceiling that we're looking at, but it's not getting there if we're getting beat up by the Rams' second and third stringers.
Yeah, that's really the bottom line. I think even aside, like next to Kent McKinney, you saw some really good safety play from the two rookies. You saw Bullard come up and make a couple of nice stops in the run defense, and Evan Williams there.
Yep.
I think it was 10 tackles, and he had a couple of pass breakups, including the game winner at the end there. I'm seeing a lot out of Evan Williams. I liked him in the preseason, but Bullard has played exceptionally well as well. But I think this safety group that Green Bay has is as good as they've been in quite some time.
Absolutely, and it's needed, unfortunately needed. But if this offense can
Mhm.
keep putting up points like this, they're going to need to be throwing it. And so if we don't let them, whoever we're playing, run dominate us, if they have to be throwing the ball. I saw a quote from McKinney after the game. He said, "If I see the ball in the air around me, I take it as disrespect." That's what I want my safety feeling like.
Yeah, no, you hadn't seen that. I remember haha Clinton Dix, his best season, he had 5 interceptions. And a lot of them were the ones that were just up in the air and they were overthrown. And he was able to come away with them, which I think 3 of those have been the case for McKinney. But they just don't throw balls down the field when he's back there because I think he's in the best in the NFL there when that ball is thrown up. Like he is, and like you said, he's got that mentality, and boy, he's backing it up. No, it's exciting. The ceiling is exciting, but you just want to see a little bit more push, a little bit more aggression. But now I think we're kind of just picking stones here. Like you got to be happy with the win. You go to LA, you're a little bit banged up on both the offensive and the defensive side. You're coming off a tough loss. It was a week where you really needed a win, and I didn't really care how it happened. I think overall you just got to be happy that was the final result.
Seeing Arizona next week and running quarterbacks always give us fits.
Yeah,
Uh,
and Arizona just beat San Francisco.
it's a big win for the guys.
Yeah, it is. Talking about San Francisco here, what is going on there in the Bay? That is, the losses are starting to pile up here. I don't know if you saw the kind of video that was talking about the curse that San Francisco's had with their quarterbacks, where it's been Kaepernick and then to Garoppolo and then to Purdy, where they play really, really well in the system, go to the Super Bowl, lose the Super Bowl, and then start to play bad and eventually lose their jobs after that. Do you think that that is going to be a trend that continues here for Brock Purdy?
It's tough when you look at, a team that has stayed consistent and that strong for a while because, are they bringing the whole crew back? Or again, are they going to be that good? Are they going to keep being that good because they have, Trent Williams, Debo, hope McCaffrey can make it back at some point, but it's not sounding
Yeah,
good.
no.
Or is there going to be a natural attrition that sets place because you keep doing the same thing over and over and you never break through? At what point do you just slowly start to fall off and the league starts catching on? A lot of this Shanahan and McVay style offense is not brand new anymore, so I can see how there's a little bit of league catching on to what's going on. They're still too talented for me to count them out. If they go into the playoffs as a 10-7 team, nobody wants to play them. That's
Right.
not changing. I think anybody would rather play a 15-2 Vikings team over a 10-7 San Francisco team come playoffs. So I still trust Shanahan. Unfortunately, I still think they're dominant. But it's going to take until about week 8 or 9 until I'm giving up on the San Francisco team.
I think I'm in the same point. I that's a very talented team. I thought it last year as well. It's last year is one of the most talented rosters I think I'd ever seen for a San Francisco team. And this year, I think you're really seeing the difference that a Christian McCaffrey makes. Like he adds a good 4 to 5 wins, I think, to your team at the end of the year. And this year, they're gonna have to see how long they can go without him because he's dealing with I think it's Achilles tendonitis, and those are some scary words to throw for a running back as shifty as him. Like that's his entire game. I mean, essentially for any running back, you kind of need your Achilles. But yeah, I'm in the same boat. I think San Francisco is a little bit too talented. I like that you brought up Minnesota because that was a game that some people were thinking they were going to start to fall off. They're playing a really tough Jets defense. Aaron Rodgers historically has always played really well against the Vikings. It was a game in London, but how scared are you as the Vikings kind of continue this role that they got going at the beginning of the season? 5-0 now in Minnesota.
I'm still not scared of this Vikings team. I'm still not. I still feel pretty good about them. I mean, they're a front runner team. They got out. It was the first time Rodgers threw 2 picks in the first quarter in his career, this past week. So they get out. They get a good lead. They play good ball control. They got a good defense. Flores is cooking up a good defense. Hey, they're playing good. They're going to be a fun playoff team this year. I'm happy for the folks in Minnesota that they're going to
Yeah.
go a fun 11-6 and maybe give somebody trouble in the first round. I'm still not super worried about this Minnesota team. We'll see how dynamic they get when Hawkinson comes back. We'll see if they keep locking people up on defense. Um, I think I've seen too much of Sam Darnold, and I've seen too much of the Minnesota Vikings to be all in on this team quite yet.
I mean, you say 11-6 is a fun. That means they go 6-6 the rest of the way, which I mean is it's definitely possible, but that it's a bit of a fall off after starting 5-0. And Chicago, they take on Carolina. That's probably the best we've seen of Caleb Williams. What are your overall thoughts on that game?
That's the best we've seen of Kalen for sure. He had a pretty sound game a couple weeks ago where I think he threw 154 and didn't turn the ball over. But now he's throwing for yards. He had an awesome touchdown pass to DJ Moore. That was on a dime, I think, off his back foot. So that was good to see.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Bears are at 3-2. I think they're chugging along. Caleb's getting better. He's getting better. Still got to see it. Still think Chicago is quarterback purgatory. So we'll see if he can get out of there. But he's thrown a couple 300-yard games. That's more than I've seen from a Bears quarterback since prime Jay Cutler. So
All right.
they got the they got the weapons
Smoking Jay.
around him. It looks like the defense is there. I think Chicago can be a decent enough team. I don't think this NFC North has given the Packers or Lions any trouble, though. I still think that Chicago's a year out. Minnesota is a fraudulent 5-0.
Well, they've had to beat some good teams. That is probably the best fraudulent 5-0 team that could possibly ever be, because they've played good competition. They've beaten the Jets, they've beaten the 49ers, they've beaten the Packers. Like it's at some point you got to start to believe that this is a real team that could give somebody fits when it comes to the playoffs. And right here in the regular season, I don't know what the numbers are. I don't know how many teams have ever started 5-0 and missed the playoffs, especially with this format. But I think where you talk in the NFC North, Detroit and Green Bay, like there's got to be a bit of a threat. You have a team with 5 wins undefeated right now.
It's the Vikings. I've seen too much. I got too much of a sample size. I thought that they were really good when they had Dalvin Cook, they had Diggs, they had Kurt. I thought they've had some talent rolling through those doors. They've had some good teams. And so maybe that's the key for them. Maybe they had to check a lot of ego at the door and just, get back to playing sound football. I It's coming for the Vikings. They got a 11-6, 12-5, something like that. I'm
All
happy
right.
for. I'm happy for him.
I think 12-5 is more realistic than 11-6. But yeah, I think you're right. We talk about a Brewers curse, but in Minnesota with the Vikings, man, there's been something going on there for all time. But we can shift gears here. I think the best game of the week I didn't stay awake for that Pittsburgh Dallas game as they had the lightning delay there. It looked like it ended up being a good game. You see 2 interceptions from Dak Prescott, kind of what Dak Prescott's year has kind of looked like just enough to give his team maybe a chance. Uh, I think the best game though was obviously Cincinnati and Baltimore, or Baltimore pulled it off. Those boys went back and forth, but Cincinnati, they just keep losing. I think this is a good team, and I don't know what's happening there in Bengal land.
1-4 for Cincinnati. And not to go back to the Vikings, but I think a whole lot of sane football fans out there would take Cincy over Minnesota any day of the week. But at some
Right.
point, these records are giving you a tough hill to climb here. 1-4 is a really tough spot for what should be a good team. This a good offense, I should say, because that defense is not looking good in Cincinnati. Burrow keeps putting up yards. Jamar Chase showed up. Jamar Chase is the man. I love it. And Baltimore might be like that, which is tough that Cincinnati just ran into a buzzsaw like that. You're going to put 38 up on Baltimore's defense and not win. There's not going to be many teams to do that.
Yeah, I think Lamar Jackson, he's shown up there at the end of the game once again, which you've seen him try to attempt to do that in Kansas City. You were one toe away from getting a win there, but I think that's going to be a scary team moving forward in Cincy. They're going to have to turn some things around. Uh, so it looks as if we're running out a little bit of time here, so we'll just do a little summary. The Badgers, of course, the big blowout win. I saw Braden Locke with 2 interceptions early. I was a little bit concerned, but then the second that I turned the game off, then it looks like they really turned it on. I don't know if you have any final thoughts on that game.
Happy for a Badgers win. Yeah, I'm going to keep rooting on for Bucky. It's not going to be our season this year. Hope the best for Malusi. He's stepping away for a little bit. So,
Yep,
keeping him in the thoughts.
absolutely. And then when it comes to baseball, how did you cope with your Brewers loss there?
So fortunately, I was visiting friends, and I did go to a concert shortly after. I've been excited for this concert for a couple months, so we did have an immediate turnaround of positivity. But good Lord, that was crushing. That one hurt. Yeah,
Yeah.
Bowers is hitting us a home run, go ahead home run. What else can you ask for? I really wanted Churio to get a whack too. It was a series where Turang was on fire. We had the lead. Peralta, I loved seeing Freddie come into the eighth. Loved that. He shut him down. And then what else can you do? You got Devin Williams on the mound, a 2-run lead. Um, Blows it, big homer, and then Churio didn't get a chance to hit. If we could have just not hit a double play to close it out, that was really all I didn't want to see happen. So that Churio would give us a little bit of hope. Um, yeah, that sucked.
Yeah, it really did. I had some tough feelings there, especially after hearing Jeff Levering's final call of the evening when he was signing off. I don't know if you saw that, but you can hear him kind of cracking up in his voice when he's about to go off. and Bob Euchre as well, which actually I got birthday coming up this week. And the one gift that I got from my mother was a NL Central Champions t-shirt. It says, I peed my pants 2024 National League Central Champs, which was a great t-shirt. But after, of course, I'm sure she buys these t-shirts right before the Brewers lose. I'm just waiting until the Brewers can play after my birthday. I think that'd be a cool thing where I can kind of wear this t-shirt and not have any Cubs fans come and be like, hey, how'd the first round go again this year? So, but yeah, that's kind of where it's at, but I think it helps a lot to look towards next year. I talked a little bit about it on ESPN Lacrosse because, of course, my podcast on Friday, it was essentially just podcast tears where it's this team is cursed. I don't know what the heck's going on. That was one of the toughest games I've ever had to watch, but you can turn the page, and I think Milwaukee's sitting in a very good spot when it comes to next year. You look at all the guys, all the arms that are supposed to be healthy. Of course, Willie Adames, that was probably his last game as a Brewer, but I think there's a lot to be hopeful about when it comes to the Milwaukee Brewers for next year.
A lot of young talent. I think Murphy's the man. He made a few mistakes this postseason that he will learn from. And yeah, Brewers they should only be getting better. They've had one of the best farm systems for the past 5-10 years, and the young fast guys. Willie's going to be missed. He didn't do himself any favors this postseason as far as missing him too much. Would have loved to see him put together a little bit of something here in the playoffs, but I'll be missed. He's a Brewer. He'll always be welcome back in Milwaukee.
Oh, for sure. I think, and we'll talk more about this in these next coming weeks here because I'm too much of a Brewer fan to not talk about Brewers on a Wisconsin sports podcast. But I think third base really, that'll be the one hole. Jory Ortiz is going to move over to shortstop, and then third base, that'll be where the team has to go figure something out, which we'll see if they try to do things internally or externally. But regardless, I'm hopeful. There's a lot of young talent. I think there's a lot of kids that are going to play better even than they did this year. So just before we sign off here. Yeah.
Are we bringing up that AAA pitcher, Mihalovic?
Mizorowski.
That's the guy.
I bet Mizorowski makes a team out of camp. Yeah, whether it be out of the bullpen or in the starting rotation. But for those of you listening that don't know who Jacob Mizorowski is, look up his tape. That boy's got a fastball and a slider that is very scary. It's also scary to think of how skinny he is and how his arm's going to hold up with that herky-jerky motion, but his stuff is some of the best that I've ever seen. But yeah, he's one of those guys that's probably going to be considered for that rotation. But before we sign off, you can go NFL, you can go college football, you can go, even if you saw a little bit of Bucks preseason basketball, you got any final thoughts here for the fans?
Bucks season coming up. Bucks in 6, baby. I'm excited. Giannis revenge tour. Get that MVP bet in early.
Oh, I like it. I think there's too much voter fatigue for Giannis to win an MVP for the next 3 or 4 years. But like I don't know. There's no reason for him to not be in strong consideration last year. It was ridiculous that it wasn't even a close vote at the end of the year because that I think was the best we've seen of Giannis really in a regular season. But voter fatigue with Giannis. We talk about him too much apparently. But I'm Cody Depius. That's Sam Douglas. I want to thank you guys for being here. We'll see you once again tomorrow for another edition of A Little Bit of Cheese, your daily bite-sized Wisconsin sports podcast.